The unexpected encounter. David had always known that space travel would bring him to strange and unfamiliar places, but nothing could have prepared him for what he saw as he stepped off the ship. The alien planet was unlike anything he had ever imagined. The sky was a deep, swirling shade of violet, and the ground beneath his feet was soft and spongy, almost as if the planet itself was breathing. The air smelled faintly of something sweet, like flowers mixed with the sharp tang of metal. He was here on a mission to establish peaceful contact with an alien species that had recently made contact with Earth. The hope was to build an alliance, to share knowledge, and to prevent any misunderstandings that might lead to conflict. David's job was to act as an ambassador, to represent humanity and show the aliens that Earth meant no harm. As he walked down the ramp of the ship, his boots sinking slightly into the soft ground, he could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. The eyes of the aliens were upon him, their expressions hard to read. They were humanoid, but their features were distinctly alien. Smooth skin that shimmered in the sunlight, elongated limbs, and eyes that seemed too large for their faces, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. There were many of them, standing in a semicircle, watching him closely. Some had their arms crossed, while others were simply observing with curious, calculating stares. They were waiting for him to speak, to make the first move. David took a deep breath and stepped forward, preparing to speak. But before he could say a word, something strange happened. One of the aliens, who stood at the front of the group, stepped forward. She was taller than the others, with long silver hair that flowed down her back like a waterfall of light. Her eyes were the most striking feature, an intense, deep blue that seemed to hold a kind of ancient wisdom in them. She studied him for a moment, and then, to David's shock, she smiled. The smile was slow, almost knowing, as if she recognized him in a way that made David feel uncomfortable. He had never met her before, at least he didn't think so. But there was something in her expression that made him feel as though he should know her. Her gaze lingered on him, and David felt a sudden jolt of recognition. It was as if something deep inside of him had been awakened. But what could it be? He didn't know this alien woman. He had never seen her before. And yet she seemed familiar. Her smile only deepened, and that strange sense of recognition grew stronger. Then, to his further surprise, the woman turned to the others around her. Her voice, though alien in tone, carried through the air with a soft but confident lilt. "That's my husband," she said, gesturing toward David. David froze. For a moment, the world seemed to stop. He blinked, unsure of what he had just heard. What did she just say? His mind raced, but the words hung in the air like a heavy weight. The alien woman had just said that he was her husband. He glanced around at the other aliens, expecting to see confusion, but instead, they all seemed to nod in agreement, as if they had heard this before. A few of them even gave him knowing looks, as if they were in on some kind of secret that he wasn't aware of. "Excuse me?" David finally managed to say, his voice shaking slightly as he tried to process what had just happened. "What do you mean? I'm your husband." The woman turned back to him, her smile never fading. She took a step closer, her eyes locking with his. It was a look that was both comforting and unnerving at the same time. She didn't speak, but the intensity of her gaze told David that this was no joke. He looked around again, but no one spoke. It felt as though the entire world was holding its breath, waiting for an explanation. David's mind was spinning. Could this be a cultural misunderstanding? Did the aliens have some tradition where they called anyone they were connected to husband or wife? That didn't make sense either. Her eyes said something else. They said something more personal, something deeper. David's heart began to race. He had no idea how to react. Could this alien woman truly believe that he was her husband? And if she did, why? As he struggled to make sense of the situation, a strange thought flickered in the back of his mind. What if she was telling the truth? What if there was something about him, something hidden deep inside his mind, that connected him to this woman? Could there be some kind of connection beyond his understanding? Could it be possible that they had met in another time, another life? He dismissed the thought as quickly as it had come. That was impossible. The woman took a step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "I know you," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. "You may not remember, but we have met many times." David felt a chill run down his spine. He had never met this woman before, that was certain. But there was something in her voice, something so confident, so sure, that made him question everything. The rest of the group stood still, watching intently. Some exchanged glances, but no one spoke. The silence stretched on, heavy and thick. As David tried to process the situation, he felt as though the world around him had suddenly shifted, and he was standing in the middle of something much larger than he could comprehend. As the woman smiled at him once more, David felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. He didn't know what was happening, but somehow it didn't seem entirely wrong. Could it be possible? The confusion. David stood there, his mind racing as the alien woman's words echoed in his ears. "That's my husband." The words felt unreal, like they belonged to someone else. He stared at her, unable to comprehend what had just happened. His heart was pounding in his chest as the strange, almost electric feeling between them intensified. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. The alien woman had stepped back, her smile never fading, but her eyes were now studying him with a quiet intensity. David couldn't figure out whether she was serious or if this was some elaborate joke. Nothing about this situation made sense. The other aliens around them seemed unfazed by her declaration. Some of them nodded slightly, while others exchanged brief glances, but no one spoke. David's mind was spinning. This was supposed to be a diplomatic mission, a peaceful negotiation with an alien species. He wasn't here to get involved in some strange alien romance. "Are you sure?" David managed to ask, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman nodded slowly, as if the answer was obvious. "I'm sure," she said simply, her voice soft and confident. "You may not remember, but we were once together, in another life." David blinked. Another life? Was this some alien cultural tradition? Were all their marriages like this? A kind of reincarnation, maybe? But that didn't make any sense. He was human. He didn't believe in things like past lives or soulmates across time. This was absurd. He forced himself to focus, trying to steer the conversation back to the task at hand. "I think you have the wrong idea," he said, trying to remain calm despite the confusion swirling inside him. "I've never met you before. I'm here as a representative of Earth, to make contact and discuss peace." Her smile remained, but her gaze softened. She didn't look angry or offended. If anything, she seemed understanding, almost like she expected him to be confused. "I know," she said quietly, "but I know you. And you know me, even if you don't remember." David shook his head, his brow furrowing as he tried to make sense of what she was saying. "I'm sorry, but I don't understand. How could I have known you if we've never met before? I've never been here, never seen any of you." The woman didn't immediately answer. Instead, she took a step closer, her gaze never leaving his. The rest of the alien group remained silent, watching the interaction with interest, but not intervening. The atmosphere felt heavy, charged with something David couldn't quite name. "There are things you don't remember," she said finally, her voice low and steady. "Things that you will remember soon, but for now I will wait. Time will reveal it to you. Just know we have always been connected." David's chest tightened, the feeling of familiarity growing stronger, even though he didn't want to believe it. He was here on a mission. This wasn't supposed to be about strange alien claims or personal connections. It was supposed to be about building a future together, about ensuring peace between Earth and these beings. Instead, he was standing in front of an alien woman who was claiming he was her husband. The other aliens began to stir, their quiet conversations starting up again, as though they were waiting for something. It was as if the alien woman had expected David to question her, to be confused, and now they were simply waiting for him to catch up. But David wasn't ready to accept this yet. He couldn't. He had a job to do. He needed to find a way to focus on the mission, not on whatever strange connection this woman believed they had. "I don't remember you," David said, his voice shaky but firm. "And I don't know what this is, but I'm here to talk about peace, not whatever this is." The alien woman's expression didn't change, but David could see a flicker of sadness in her eyes. For a brief moment, she looked as though she were about to say something more, but instead, she simply nodded. "I understand," she said softly. "You don't remember now. But in time, you will." David swallowed hard. The air around him seemed thick, and he could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. What did she mean by that? How could he remember something that had never happened? The others in the group were still watching, waiting for David's response. Their eyes were calm, expectant, but there was no sign of hostility. If anything, they seemed patient. It was as if they all knew something David didn't, and they were willing to let him come to it on his own. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, David took a deep breath and nodded. "Okay, I'll keep that in mind. But for now, I need to focus on the task at hand. I'm here to talk peace, and that's what we'll do." The woman smiled again, that same serene, knowing smile, and David couldn't help but feel like there was something more to her words than just a simple greeting. "As you wish, human," she said softly. "But remember, you're not just here for peace. You're here for something much greater." David glanced around the group again. They all seemed so calm, so sure of themselves. But he wasn't ready to accept whatever this was. Not yet. The woman took one last look at him, then nodded to her companions. "We will talk soon, David. Very soon." As the group began to move away, leaving David alone with his thoughts, he felt a strange mixture of relief and confusion. His mission was clear, but this encounter, this strange claim, was anything but. The questions lingered in his mind as he watched the alien group retreat into the distance. Who was she really? Why did she claim to know him? And how could he possibly forget someone who felt so familiar? One thing was for sure. Nothing was as simple as it seemed on this planet. And David had no idea just how much his life was about to change. This part continues the buildup of suspense, with David growing more confused and intrigued by the alien woman's claim. The mystery deepens as the strange connection between them becomes more central to the story, keeping the audience hooked. And eager to learn more, ask ChatGPT, the unexplained bond David couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The encounter with the alien woman, who had claimed he was her husband, kept playing in his mind. Every time he tried to focus on the mission, her words echoed in his thoughts, pulling him back. "You may not remember, but we were once together. In another life." He paced the small room in the alien embassy, the walls lined with strange symbols he couldn't decipher. He had been brought here for a peaceful discussion, a diplomatic mission to pave the way for future relations between Earth and these new alien species. Yet here he was, consumed by a question he couldn't answer. How could she know me? David ran a hand through his hair, trying to focus. He needed to meet with the alien leaders, discuss the peace talks, and make sure everything was on track. But every time he thought about the task ahead, His mind wandered back to the woman and her claim. The more he thought about it, the more. The odd sense of familiarity between them grew. The woman had smiled at him in such a knowing way. There had been no hesitation, no uncertainty in her eyes. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment. She had said it so casually, like it was an obvious truth. "That's my husband." Yet David was certain he had never met her before. He had no memory of her, nothing that connected him to her. He needed answers. David stood up from the chair and walked over to the window, gazing out at the alien landscape. The sky was still a strange violet hue, and the planets, twin moons, were just beginning to rise, casting a soft, otherworldly glow across the land. It was beautiful, yet the beauty felt distant, somehow colder now that he was grappling with questions he couldn't answer. He had been a soldier and a diplomat for years, trained to deal with situations like this, unexpected encounters, difficult conversations, and cultural misunderstandings. But this was something different. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was personal. As he stood there, lost in thought, the door to the room opened, and one of the alien assistants entered. "The delegation is ready to speak with you, Ambassador David," the assistant said, its voice calm and respectful. David nodded absently, his mind still elsewhere. "I'll be there in a moment," he replied, his voice distant. The assistant hesitated for a moment, then left, closing the door softly behind them. David was alone again, his thoughts spiraling out of control. He could hear the distant hum of activity outside, a reminder of the larger purpose of his mission. Yet his mind kept returning to the alien woman, her smile, her words, her claim that they had been together before. With a frustrated sigh, David turned away from the window and began to pace again. He couldn't get her out of his mind. The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. There had to be some explanation. Maybe it was a cultural thing, a misunderstanding about their species' way of communicating. But he couldn't ignore the strange connection he felt when she looked at him. It wasn't just a casual glance. It was deeper, as though she knew him in a way no one else could. Then it hit him, the feeling, the inexplicable sense of familiarity he had felt the moment their eyes met. It was like a jolt, a spark of recognition, that hit him in the chest. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. He had no memory of her, but something inside him stirred, as though his soul had recognized her before his mind could comprehend it. David stopped in his tracks. Was this possible? Was it even real? Was it some kind of trick the aliens were playing on him? He had read about mind tricks, about aliens using their abilities to manipulate thoughts and memories. But that didn't feel like what was happening here. No, this felt different. It felt real. He sat down at the desk, running his fingers over the strange artifacts in front of him, the same ones he had been given to study. His eyes fell on one in particular, a small glowing crystal that pulsed softly. He remembered when the alien woman had handed it to him during their brief interaction. She had looked at him and said, "This will help you understand." David picked up the crystal and turned it over in his hand. It felt warm, almost alive, in his palm. He didn't know what it was or what it could do, but he couldn't ignore the feeling that it had something to do with what was happening. The strange connection he had felt, it was like the crystal was somehow linked to that feeling. Was it possible the crystal held the key to understanding everything? With a sigh, David set the crystal down. "I need answers," he muttered, as if the crystal could provide them. He had no idea where to start or what questions to ask, but he knew one thing. He couldn't continue on this mission without understanding what had happened between him and the alien woman. He stood up and walked toward the door, determination, replacing the confusion that had clouded his mind moments before. No more waiting. No more pretending this was just a misunderstanding. He needed to speak to her again. He had to understand what she meant. What did she know that I didn't? As he stepped into the hallway, he was greeted by the alien delegation who were waiting for him. They all bowed respectfully as he entered. But David's mind was elsewhere. His focus had shifted. This wasn't just about the mission anymore. This was personal. The truth had to be out there, and he was going to find it. The alien woman had said, "You'll remember." David wasn't sure what that meant, but he was ready to find out. The shocking revelation David had spent the past few days trying to focus on his mission. He had met with the alien leaders, discussed potential peace treaties, and had even made some progress. Yet, no matter how hard he tried, his mind kept drifting back to the alien woman. The connection between them was undeniable. But the more he thought about it, the more confused he became. The feeling of recognition was still there, lingering in his chest. Every time he closed his eyes, he could almost see flashes of something. A life lived long ago, a love shared. But it wasn't clear. It was as though the memories were just out of reach, slipping through his fingers like sand dot. It was late one evening when it happened again. David was walking back to his quarters after a long day of meetings, the night air cool against his skin. He hadn't planned to visit her, but his feet carried him there, as though some invisible force was guiding him. He found himself standing outside the door to the alien woman's quarters. He hesitated. His mind raced. What was he doing? He shouldn't be here. But something inside him urged him to go, to get answers. With a deep breath, he knocked. The door opened almost immediately, revealing the alien woman. She looked surprised, but her eyes softened when she saw him standing there. "David," she said, her voice gentle. "I was wondering when you would come." David felt a mix of confusion and disbelief. "How did you know I was coming?" She smiled, the same warm, knowing smile that had both unsettled and comforted him from the start. "I've been waiting for you. We have something to discuss, don't we?" David took a step inside, though he wasn't sure why. The room was dimly lit, with strange, glowing patterns on the walls that pulsed softly, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. He sat down, feeling oddly at ease in her presence, even though his mind was still racing. "I don't understand," David said, his voice filled with frustration. "You keep saying we were together, that we have a connection, but I don't remember any of it. I've never been here before. I've never met you. Why do I feel like I know you?" The woman looked at him, her expression soft, almost sad. "You don't remember because it's been hidden from you." "Hidden? What do you mean hidden?" She took a deep breath, as though weighing her words carefully. "David, you are not just an ordinary human. You were chosen long ago. Chosen for a purpose that even you don't fully understand yet." David felt a chill run down his spine. Chosen? By who? She stepped closer, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "By fate," she said softly. "You and I, we were once bound together in a past life. A life that was taken from us." David's mind reeled. "Past life? Are you saying I've lived before? That we've been together before?" "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "We were together in a different time, on a different planet. We were soulmates, bound to each other by something stronger than time. But our connection was torn apart. Your memories were erased to protect you." David's heart skipped a beat. The idea of a past life, a love that transcended time, it was too much to grasp. But looking into her eyes, the pull between them felt undeniable. There was a truth in her words, something deep inside of him that couldn't ignore it. "I don't understand," David whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Why can't I remember? Why would anyone erase my memories?" The alien woman looked away for a moment, as if searching for the right words. "Because the enemies we faced were powerful. They knew that if we were together again, we would defeat them. Our love was the key to their downfall. So they did everything they could to separate us. They erased your memories, sent you to Earth, and made sure we never met again. David's mind was spinning. He tried to process everything she had said, but it felt like too much, too many questions. How could he have forgotten? Why didn't he know any of this? Why now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Why are you telling me all of this now? The woman's eyes locked with his again, and this time there was no hesitation in her gaze. Because the time has come. The forces that separated us are coming. For us again, and this time we must face them together. David's breath caught in his throat. What do you mean? What forces? Who are they? They are the ones who destroyed our world. The ones who took everything from us. They're the reason we were torn apart. And now they are coming to Earth. But this time we are stronger. This time we will fight together. David's mind was a whirlwind. He felt like he was drowning in this new reality, this truth that had been kept from him for so long. His life had been ordinary. He had always believed he was just another human, another person sent to explore the stars. But now everything had changed. He wasn't just a diplomat. He wasn't just a human. He was part of something much bigger. The alien woman stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. David, you have to remember, we are not alone. The fate of this world and the universe rests in our hands. Together we can stop them. David felt a wave of warmth flood through him as she spoke. It was as if he had known these words for centuries, even if they were new to him now. A strange, powerful bond began to grow between them, something ancient and undeniable. The weight of it all pressed down on him, and for the first time since his arrival, David understood. He wasn't here by accident. He wasn't just some diplomat, some pawn in a larger game. He was part of something much greater. And this alien woman, who claimed to be his wife from another life, was the key? He stood up slowly, feeling a new sense of purpose settling into his chest. I'm ready, he said, his voice strong. I'll remember. And I'll fight with you. The alien woman's eyes shone with pride and relief. Good. The battle has only just begun. The past life connection, the days following the revelation, were a blur. David couldn't escape the overwhelming thoughts of his past life with the alien woman. Every time he closed his eyes, he could almost see fragments of memory's faint flashes of another world, a life filled with love, laughter, and loss. But they were just that flashes, nothing clear, nothing concrete. He could feel them slipping away, like wisps of smoke. Just out of his grasp. The alien woman, her name was Lyra, had been patient with him, guiding him through the haze of his forgotten memories. She had shared stories of their past life together, of how they had once been united, ruling a planet in peace before the enemies that tore them apart arrived. Her words were soft and comforting, but they only deepened David's confusion. As the days passed, he began to remember more, or at least he thought he did. There were moments when his mind would flash back to a time when he had been with her, when they had laughed together, held each other close. But it was always fleeting, like a dream fading upon waking. One evening, Lyra took David to a quiet spot outside the alien city, a place surrounded by glowing trees whose leaves shimmered like stardust. The air was thick with the sweet scent of alien flowers. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes distant, as though she were lost in her own thoughts. David watched her, wondering if she was remembering their past too. Do you remember? She asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. David shook his head. I remember bits and pieces, but ... it's not enough. I don't know how to piece it all together. Lyra looked at him, her expression soft but serious. Your memories are locked away for a reason, David. They were taken from you to protect you. The enemies we faced, they knew our bond would make us powerful. They separated us to keep us from uniting. David's heart ached as he listened to her. He wanted to believe her, to trust that the memories would come back, but the uncertainty weighed on him. He had never experienced anything like this before, being told that he had a life he couldn't remember, that his soul had been connected to hers long before their first meeting. "You said they erased my memories," David sighed, his voice hoarse. "How is that even possible? How could anyone do that?" Lyra sighed, her eyes clouded with the pain of the past. "The enemies we faced were not like anything you've encountered. They were beings of great power, able to manipulate time and memory. They knew the strength of our bond, David. They knew that together we could defeat them. But they also knew that if we were to remember, we would rise against them. So they erased your memories, and sent you to Earth, away from me, away from everything." David shook his head again, struggling to make sense of it all. "But I don't remember anything. It feels like I'm just starting over. I don't know how to fit into all of this." Lyra reached out and touched his arm gently, her touch warm and reassuring. "You are not starting over, David. You've just forgotten. Our bond is still there. It has always been there. The connection between us is stronger than time. It cannot be erased." David looked into her eyes, and for the first time, he felt something stir deep within him, a sense of familiarity, of recognition. It was as though her presence was the final piece of a puzzle he had been trying to solve for his entire life. And yet, there was still so much he didn't understand. "I don't know how to fight this," he said quietly, his voice tinged with doubt. "I don't even know who I really am anymore." Lyra smiled softly. "You are David, my husband, my soulmate. You are the same person you've always been, but you have yet to remember the fullness of who you are. You were once a leader, a protector. You were powerful just as I was. Together, we will unlock that power again." David took a deep breath, trying to steady his emotions. It felt as though the weight of the world had suddenly been placed on his shoulders. He had come to this planet with one purpose, to broker peace between Earth and this alien race. But now, he found himself standing at the edge of something far greater. The fate of the world, perhaps the entire universe, seemed to rest on his ability to remember, to reconnect with the past he couldn't recall. Lyra stepped closer to him, her voice low and steady. "David, the time is coming. We have no more time to waste. The enemies who separated us are coming again. They will not stop until they have destroyed everything we built. But together we can stop them." David looked at her, his heart heavy with the burden of the truth. He had no memories of the past, no recollection of the love they had shared. But standing here, with Lyra by his side, he knew something had changed. He could feel the bond between them, the pull of something ancient and unbreakable. For the first time, David felt ready. He didn't know how he would fight the forces that were coming, or how he would reclaim the memories that had been stolen from him. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone. He had Lyra by his side, and together they would face whatever came next. "I'm ready," David said, his voice steady and full of determination. "Let's face them together." Lyra smiled, her eyes filled with pride and love. "We are ready, David, and this time nothing will stand in our way." The final test, the days felt longer now. The tension was thick in the air, and David could feel the weight of it pressing on his chest. He had learned so much, yet there was still so much he didn't understand. He had uncovered the truth about his past, his connection to Lyra, and the enemies that had once torn them apart. But now, the real test was beginning. The enemies that Lyra had warned him about, the ones who had erased his memories, were on their way. David couldn't ignore the feeling of urgency that had taken over him. The pieces of his past life had begun to fit together But there was still something missing. Despite the bond between him and Lyra, despite their shared history, he couldn't shake the doubt that lingered in the back of his mind. Could he really trust himself? Could he trust the power they shared to defeat an enemy that had been powerful enough to erase memories, to separate them across time and space? Lyra had told him time and time again that their connection was stronger than anything the enemy could throw at them. But even with the memories slowly returning, David still felt uncertain. What if he couldn't live up to the person he had been in their past life? What if their bond wasn't enough to protect the world they were trying to save? "I'm ready," he had said to Lyra only days ago. But now, standing on the edge of a battle that he had no choice but to fight, he wasn't so sure. The night was falling, and the air had grown cold, the violet sky above dotted with stars. David stood alone, outside the alien city, looking out over the landscape. The wind whispered through the trees, their glowing leaves shimmering softly in the dim light. The calmness of the moment felt so at odds with the storm brewing in his chest that suddenly he wasn't alone. Lyra appeared beside him, as if she had been waiting for him to come to this moment. She didn't speak at first. She just stood there, her presence a quiet comfort amidst the chaos that swirled inside him. "They're coming," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of certainty. "The enemies who took everything from us. We cannot run from this. It is time to face them." David nodded, though his heart was pounding in his chest. He didn't want to face this. He didn't want to fight, to risk everything again. But he knew what needed to be done. He couldn't turn back now. "I'm scared," David admitted quietly, not looking at her. "I'm not the person I was. What if I fail? What if we lose everything again?" Lyra's hand found his, her touch warm and reassuring. "You are the same person, David. You have always been strong. You've always had the power to fight for what matters. Don't doubt yourself now. This is our fight together. And this time we will win." Her words wrapped around him like a shield, the comfort he had needed to hear. He had spent so much time doubting himself, questioning whether he was truly ready to step into the role he had once played. But now, with Lyra by his side, he realized that he wasn't alone. They were a team. Their love, their bond, had always been a force greater than any enemy. David squeezed her hand tightly, a newfound resolve flooding through him. "I'm ready," he said again, but this time there was no doubt in his voice. "Let's stop them." Lyra smiled at him, her eyes filled with trust. "We're not just stopping them. We're taking back everything they took from us. Together." The ground beneath them trembled slightly as a low hum echoed through the air. A distant sound, like the roar of a storm, filled the night. David's senses sharpened. It was happening. The enemies were here. "They've arrived," Lyra whispered, her voice steady, yet filled with the tension of what was to come. David turned to face her, his heart racing. "Where do we start?" She nodded toward the horizon, where a dark shadow began to take shape in the distance. A fleet of alien ships, massive and intimidating, were descending from the sky. They were here, just as Lyra had said. The battle for their world, for their future, was about to begin. "We start by protecting what's ours," Lyra said, "and by showing them what happens when they mess with humanity." David felt the familiar rush of adrenaline course through his veins. He wasn't just fighting for his past. He was fighting for the future, for the people of Earth, for his second chance with Lyra. This time, he wouldn't let anything tear them apart. He followed Lyra toward the entrance of the city, where the rest of the alien defenders were gathering. The city was on high alert now. The peaceful negotiations were over. The real war had begun. But David felt ready as they joined the rest of the defenders. Lyra handed him a weapon, a sleek, advanced alien rifle that felt surprisingly comfortable in his hands. He had never used anything like it before, but the moment his fingers gripped the handle, it felt familiar. It was as if the weapon itself recognized him, as if it had always belonged to him. "This is it, David," Lyra said, her voice low but fierce. "Now we fight. For us, for Earth, for our future." David nodded, his resolve hardening. The enemy might have taken everything from them once, but this time they wouldn't succeed. This time they would fight together, and they would win. First wave of enemy soldiers appeared on the horizon, their dark silhouettes against the violet sky. The battle was about to begin, and David was ready. Victory and the hidden legacy, the battle had raged on for hours. David had never experienced anything like it, the deafening noise of alien weapons, the crackle of energy blasts cutting through the air, and the earth-shaking tremors that followed each impact. The sky above was filled with the flicker of laser fire and the distant hum of enemy ships. The once peaceful alien city had turned into a war zone, its streets now littered with debris and the remnants of destroyed vehicles. David was fighting. Alongside Lyra, their connection stronger than ever. Together, they were unstoppable. The bond they shared, built over lifetimes, gave them a power that the enemy couldn't understand. Lyra moved with the precision of a seasoned warrior, and David found himself reacting without thinking, as though he had been trained for this his entire life. They had fought their way to the center of the city, where the enemy's leader won. Of the beings who had erased David's memories stood waiting for them. The leader, a towering alien with dark, reflective armor, watched them approach with cold eyes. His face was hidden beneath a mask, but his voice boomed through the battlefield. "You think you can defeat me?" The enemy leader's voice echoed. "You're nothing but remnants of a lost past. The bond between you is weak, and your time is over." David's heart pounded, but he didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, holding his weapon steady, his eyes locked on the alien leader. "You took everything from us, our lives, our memories. But we're not the same people you destroyed. We are stronger now, and we will stop you." Lyra's voice joined his, steady and unwavering. "Your empire ends today. You should have known better than to underestimate us." The enemy leader's laugh was cold and cruel. "You think you can stop me? I control time. I control memory. I am eternal." David felt the power of those words, the weight of the alien leader's confidence. But something inside him stirred an ancient strength that had always been within him, waiting to be awakened. The memories he had regained were more than just past lives. They were a part of him, a part of who he was meant to be. And now he understood. It wasn't just about the fight. It was about remembering who he truly was. With a determined breath, David stepped forward. "You may control time, but you will never control love. You will never control us." Lyra's hand brushed against his, a silent promise that they would face this together. The connection between them flared brighter than ever, and David could feel the power of their bond coursing through him, giving him strength. He raised his weapon, and with Lyra at his side, they charged at the enemy leader. The battle intensified. Energy blasts flew past them, but they moved with the speed and grace of a unified force, deflecting attacks and pushing forward. The enemy leader sent wave after wave of his forces, but they were no match for David and Lyra. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for the future one that had been stolen from them. Finally, they reached the alien leader. He raised his hand, summoning a final wave of destructive energy. But David didn't flinch. He and Lyra stood together, their hands joined, their hearts synchronized in one powerful pulse. "Now," David whispered, just before the wave of energy crashed. Toward them. The blast hit, but instead of scattering them, it was absorbed by their bond, absorbed by the strength of their connection. The energy crackled and twisted, bending around them as if it recognized the power they shared. The alien leader's eyes widened in shock. "No," he breathed. This is impossible." With one final push, David and Lyra unleashed the full force of their combined power. The energy exploded outward in a blinding flash, engulfing the alien leader and his forces. There was a moment of silence, followed by a resounding crash as the enemy leader was defeated. The battlefield fell quiet. The hum of energy weapons stopped, and the sky seemed to settle. David stood, breathless but triumphant. Lyra's hand was still in his, her touch a steadying presence in the aftermath of the battle. Together, they had won. David turned to her, his heart filled with relief and something deeper, something that had always been there, waiting to be fully realized. "We did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lyra smiled, her eyes shining with pride. "We always knew we would." David looked out over the battlefield, the city now calm and still. The enemy had been defeated, but the victory felt incomplete. There was still so much to understand, so much to rebuild. But they had a second chance, and together they would face whatever came next. "We can finally start again," David said quietly. Lyra nodded, her gaze soft but resolute. "Yes, this is just the beginning." The sun began to rise over the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the city. The world they had fought for was theirs again, and with it came the promise of a new beginning. David and Lyra stood side by side, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced the darkness, and now, together, they would build a future one filled with hope, love, and the endless possibility of what could be. This final part brings the story to a climactic conclusion, with David and Lyra defeating the enemy and reclaiming their world. It also sets up the idea of a new beginning, with the couple ready to face the future together. The sense of victory is tempered with the realization that their journey is far from over, but now they have the power to shape it. Ask ChatGPT.